or we'll flat out invade their country and kill their leaders. We've done all those things, and everybody's aware we've done those things. There are still a few people in the U.S., mostly people running the government now, who still think we're the good guys in the world. But most of the rest of the world doesn't see us that way. They see us as kind of a malevolent and not very bright force in the world that's causing more trouble than problems that it's fixing. And so they've been waiting for a chance to break free from dollar hegemony for a long time.
John Rubino, author of the book The Money Bubble and founder of the website dollarclaps.com, talks about global de-dollarization. This is the process of moving away from the US dollar as the world's reserve currency, which has been ongoing for years, but has accelerated recently due to the US weaponizing its financial system in response to the invasion of Ukraine. Major countries are agreeing to settle transactions in currencies other than dollars, and global central banks are reducing the percent of dollars in their reserve holdings. Rubino explains that this is a long time coming and stems from the fact that the U.S. has used its monetary system and control of multinational financial institutions as weapons to bully others. Most of the world sees the U.S. as malevolent and causing more trouble than problems, and they have been waiting for a chance to break free from dollar hegemony. Rubino mentions the BRICS coalition that goes back to 2010 and how it was formed to challenge the U.S. dollar's dominance. Before we get into the video, please make sure to leave a like and click on the subscribe button to receive daily videos. Let's hear what John Rubino has to say.
What you described, both of the things you described, is something that's been a long time coming, and it's something that is happening very quickly all of a sudden. And the roots of it stem from the fact that the U.S. has been the world's monetary power since at least the 1970s, and really since after World War II. And instead of being a benevolent ruler, we've been a schoolyard bully. We've used our monetary system and the fact that we have the world's reserve currency and we control the multinational financial institutions as weapons. Anybody steps out of line, and we'll kick them out of the SWIFT bank settlement system, or we'll confiscate the bank accounts they have in New York or London or wherever, or we'll flat out invade their country and kill their leaders. We've done all those things. And everybody's aware we've done those things. There are still a few people in the U.S., mostly people running the government now, who still think we're the good guys in the world. But most of the rest of the world doesn't see us that way. They see us as kind of a malevolent and not very bright force in the world that's causing more trouble than problems that it's fixing. And so they've been waiting for a chance to break free from dollar hegemony for a long time. The whole BRICS idea, the Brazil, Russia, India, and China coalition, goes all the way back to 2010. And nothing really came of it other than China and Russia buying a bunch of gold along the way. But all of a sudden, and yeah, I think you're right that the Ukraine war had a lot to do with it here. Because basically, from the point of view of most of the rest of the world, the U.S. picked that fight by forcing Russia, by expanding NATO to Russia's borders and forcing them into it. And then they confiscated a bunch of Russian assets that were in banks in Europe, and they fed so much money and so many arms into Ukraine that the war has gone on a lot longer than was expected. And the attempt is to drain Russia dry and basically take them off the chessboard. So everybody sees this, and they're thinking, wow, God, if Russia, if this could happen to Russia, then who's next? Are they going to come after me next? So it's becoming a lot easier for different countries to justify breaking away from these rules that we've had in the past, where you could only buy oil with dollars, and most international trade had to take place in dollars, and your central bank reserves had to be mostly in dollars. And none of that's true anymore all of a sudden. And we're seeing a number of really dramatic things happen right now. And let me stop there, and then we'll get on to the dramatic things as we go along.
Okay, well, look, I think both you and I had sort of pulled data in advance of this conversation of some of the announcements that have been made recently, just to give people a sense of which specific countries are involved and what decisions they're taking here. I guess, do you want to start with your list first? Do you want to go through mine? I don't know if you still have yours in front of you, given the scramble that we had before, but.
Yeah, I printed it out. I've got it right here because there are so many names here that you can't really keep all of this in memory, just because so many countries have all of a sudden decided to either join the BRICS coalition or are talking about it, or are cutting other trade deals on the side. And so, first of all, the two big names that have applied to join the BRICS are two really serious names. Saudi Arabia, which is the biggest oil exporter in the world, and the country that is basically responsible for the whole petrodollar dominance in the past 30 or 40 years. Back in the 1970s, we cut a deal with them in which we agreed to basically make them impregnable. We were going to protect them no matter what, and all they had to do was refuse to take any other currencies except dollars for their oil. And that made the dollar the one indispensable currency, yada, yada. And that's basically held until just lately, where now Saudi Arabia is joining effectively an anti-dollar coalition and is making it known that it's willing to take other currencies in return for its oil, which means basically the petrodollar is dead. The other big name is Mexico. I mean, Mexico is right here. It's basically in a lot of ways, our manufacturing base. Demographically, Mexico is in the perfect place for a U.S. partnership because they've got a young, hardworking population, which very few other countries do, and they're very productive. We can set up a factory there. That's part of the onshoring or friendshoring trend now, where you bring back your manufacturing to your own shores. Well, for the U.S., we really like to bring it back to Mexico in a lot of cases because it's way cheaper to produce there and it's perceived as safe. Well, now Mexico is joining this coalition that is not friendly to the U.S. and the dollar. And there's a bunch of other countries too, but you get a sense of how big this is when these two countries that we kind of thought we had in our pocket are now definitely out of pocket and are definitely doing things that can't help but hurt the dollar in the intermediate term and definitely the long term.
All right, John, if I can just probe on both those for a quick sec. So I mentioned that CNN and Fox News both ran segments on this in the past 24 hours. In the Fox segment, they had former Assistant Treasury Secretary Monica Crowley, and she basically said if we indeed lose the petrodollar, that would have, quote, catastrophic implications. She basically sort of talked about an implosion, a financial and economic implosion resulting from that, and of course, a loss of reserve currency status and all that. So she was, she wasn't beating around the bush there. She said that was kind of like a nuclear event for America if indeed the petrodollar is lost. And my understanding of the petrodollar deal that was struck with Saudi Arabia was that, hey, we will fund your defense, Saudi Arabia. So you basically are going to be protected by the military shield and might of the U.S. So if Saudi Arabia is potentially breaking the petrodollar, I'm just curious, do you have any idea of how they're going to supplement, if the U.S. gets angry and then therefore retracts its military protection, do they know who's going to step up and fill that gap?
Well, that is, probably the third biggest story in this overall story here so far. And China just brokered a peace deal between Saudi Arabia and Iran. And Iran was the big risk for Saudi Arabia. They're on two different sides of the debate within Islam about how that religion should be run. And they've been at each other's throats forever. And if they're going to make peace and they're going to partner with China as part of this process, then Saudi Arabia really doesn't need the U.S. as protection because its main enemy is now its friend. And it's got China over there helping it build things and create a manufacturing base or at least buy a lot of oil, whatever. So not only has Saudi Arabia killed the petrodollar, but it's basically, to an extent, pushed the U.S. out of the Middle East. What's our role there? If Iran and Saudi Arabia don't want us there, and they're partners with China, it's not clear what we're doing over there anymore, because Iraq is sort of an Iranian, I don't want to say puppet state, that's too much, but they are in a position where Iran has a lot of influence within Iraq. So you take them off the table, and what's the point of a U.S. presence in the Middle East other than guaranteeing Israel's security? And that doesn't have much to do with oil in the long run. So yeah, Saudi Arabia has basically cut a series of deals that makes the U.S. unnecessary there, and that's an earthquake. The woman you were quoting didn't overstate the stakes here, because if you take the petrodollar out of the equation, then a lot of other countries no longer need to hold as many dollars as they currently do, because they don't necessarily need them to buy oil. They can maybe use their own currencies or some other currency of another country to do it. And what happens to those dollars? Well, they're probably in the form of treasury bonds, treasury paper, with the central bank in a given country. And that central bank is liable to lower the dollar's role in their foreign exchange reserves by selling a lot of treasury bonds, which does two things. It pushes up interest rates and lowers the exchange rate of the dollar. So this is, to say it's an attack on the dollar is probably overstating it, but it's definitely putting downward pressure on the value of the dollar, and is forcing us to live within our means. We're the biggest debtor country in the world right now, and we borrow between $1 and $3 trillion a year just to get by.
The petrodollar deal between Saudi Arabia and the U.S. was an agreement that Saudi Arabia would sell oil in dollars in exchange for military protection. Recently, China has brokered a peace deal between Saudi Arabia and Iran, which has made the U.S. protection unnecessary for Saudi Arabia. This deal has also pushed the U.S. out of the Middle East, making its role there unclear. If the petrodollar deal is cut, many countries will no longer need to hold as many dollars, and this will put downward pressure on the value of the dollar, forcing the U.S. to live within its means. The U.S. is already in a fragile financial position, and this deal may lead to bigger financial crises in the future. Is this the end of the dollar? Or will the U.S. form new alliances to make sure the dollar stays the reserve currency of the world? Let us know what you think in the comments.